A few minutes later, using his hand, Lu Sheng began to break the door of the spaceship. This door was connected to a room which was filled with energy crystals. Lu Sheng's attention was fixed on them and his eyes widened in surprise. Lu Sheng began to carefully observe the mountain of energy crystals and his eyes started to shine with joy. He could not believe the immense fortune that the star pirate had managed to amass. He calculated that, at a minimum, there were hundreds of tons, an exorbitant amount if he considered that for his own advancement to level 9. He had only used a few hundred kilos. He could not help but smile upon realizing that in the spaceship there must be hundreds of tons, an amount that would be more than enough for him to cultivate tens of thousands of additional immortal cells. Lu Sheng emerged from the spaceship, extended his hand and used his power, causing his energy to coil around it. He had to resort to this rough method, as he still didn't know how to pilot spaceships. But he was determined to take all the energy crystals back to the blue planet to count them calmly. With his body surrounded by blue energy, Lu Sheng began descending toward the blue planet. Several minutes later, Lu Sheng descended smoothly onto the planet, and then placed Frando's spaceship on the ground. Our boy began dusting off his hands and with a serene gaze, let out a sigh. Just at that moment, his phone started to ring. Lu Sheng took his phone out of his pocket and saw that he had a message from his mother. She revealed that she and his father had seen him on television. With a calm expression, Lu Sheng decided to reply to the messages and asked his mother not to worry and decided to talk calmly once he returned home, revealing that he was still somewhat busy. The mother, who was somewhat worried, asked him to take care of himself and not get exhausted. Our boy promised to listen to her. After finishing the conversation, Lu Sheng let out a sigh. He began to look to one side and his eyes started to shine with seriousness. Now that his identity had been revealed, he had no idea how he would explain to his family that he was the god of war. Finally, he decided that he would find the right moment to calmly tell them everything. Without wasting any more time, Lu Sheng decided to enter Frando's spaceship. As he climbed the stairs, he reflected on the incredible harvest of this day, as he estimated that the total amount of energy crystal resources exceeded 700 tons. Lu Sheng reached the room where the mountain of energy crystals was. He began to observe carefully. He noticed that there was also a special type of crystal, as he discovered that apart from a small portion which were raw energy minerals that he had already seen, the rest were blocks of already processed energy crystals. Lu Sheng approached, and while his eyes were shining with confusion, he grabbed one of the energy crystals. He had no idea what exactly he was holding in his hands. Energy began to emerge from the crystal. According to Lu Sheng, the energy was incredibly violent, at least hundreds of times more powerful than that of a normal crystal. He realized that with his current power, he couldn't even refine and absorb it instantly, so he would have to do it slowly. It also seemed strange to him that there existed only less than 50 tons of this type. Lu Sheng began walking around the spaceship until he reached some shelves where Frando's equipment was. He stopped walking. There were several interstellar combat suits and melee weapons, such as alloy swords. The suits were similar to Lan Chen's. There was also a sword. Lu Sheng's attention was fixed on it and his eyes were filled with amazement. He began to touch the glass of the shelf, realizing that it was not just any weapon, but an authentic level 10 melee weapon. The tip of the sword began to shine, and Lu Sheng touched it with his finger. The tip of the sword was so sharp that it made a small cut on his finger. Green energy began to emerge from his hand. The eyes of our boy widened with curiosity. The energy managed to leave a mark on his skin, but it recovered instantly, which meant that the defense of his martial body was also level 10. The spaceship was full of capsules with strange creatures inside. There were also prisoners from many other planetary species, and our boy decided he would wait for Lan Chen to arrive to ask him what to do with them. He also reflected on the journey to other star systems. Although he could leave the planet with his own body, he recognized that in terms of speed he was no faster than a turtle in a space measured in light years. Therefore, for such journeys, he would still have to rely on spaceship technology. Lu Sheng's eyes began to shine with seriousness. He knew that before leaving the blue planet, he had to clarify one thing: the origin of the crisis that would affect Earth in 8 years, the one that had been predicted in the dream space. He did not want to leave and then return to find that everything had turned into a wasteland. With a calm gaze, Lu Sheng called Ai. Not long after, she began to manifest in front of our boy. Lu Sheng's attention was fixed on her and his eyes widened in surprise. Everything else had disappeared. Only she remained, to remind him that all of this had not been a dream. Lu Sheng began to gaze toward the ground and asked the system to simulate his future. Ai placed her hands over her chest and her eyes began to shine. And not long after, red windows from the system started floating around her. The system revealed the result of the simulation. He would become the martial patriarch of the Blue Planet. At 21 years old, he would leave his world to be the first genius in 100,000 years of the White Mist Star sector. The following year, he would participate in the tournament of celestial chosen ones of the 5 stellar regions and obtain first place. At 40 years old, he would reach level 11 and rank among the top 100 in the tournament of the Celestial Serpent Star system. The simulation extended much further, showing that at 100,000 years he would ascend to level 15, becoming Lord of the Celestial Serpent Star system, only to finally perish at 300,000 years along with the destruction of the universe. Upon seeing this, Lu Sheng's eyes widened with fear and surprise. Reflecting on the result, he realized that according to the simulation, at 100,000 years he would reach level 15 and become Lord of the Celestial Serpent Star system. But in the end, he too would perish alongside with collapse of universe. This led him to conclude that within next 300,000 years, at most, he'd reach level 15 without even reaching 16. However, a confident smile appeared on his face as he'd thought the system was nothing more than a simulation. He was convinced that, with all inheritances he'd obtained, there was no way he'd remain stuck at that point. With a sad gaze, he asked the system to restart the simulation. Ai extended her hands, and while her eyes were shining, she began to simulate again the future of the Blue Planet. The system began to show how the Blue Planet would be destroyed, revealing that its end would come 8 years later, due to the invasion from the universe of the dark side. Lu Sheng's eyes filled with fear, leaving him in shock, realizing that the problem was in the rift of the abyss. He understood that, within a period of 8 years, the Blue Planet would go from being a resource planet to a battlefield planet, and, finally, it would be completely destroyed. Lu Sheng began to imagine his master from behind with closed eyes. He knew better than anyone that this invasion crisis was something that not even a powerful level 16 being, like his master, could stop. The image of the precious Blue Planet came to our boy's mind. He knew that the only thing he could do was find a new habitable planet for the inhabitants of the Blue Planet within 8 years and evacuate them. With a cheerful expression, Lu Sheng clenched his fist. His small goal for this stage was clear: to buy a habitable planet that was big enough. At that moment, the spaceship door began to open and many warriors started walking toward our boy. Feeling this, he came out of his trance. Jiang Yu closed her eyes and with a gaze full of admiration bowed her head before Lu Sheng as a form of respect, calling him Lord Lu Sheng. The other martial saints also did the same as her and showed their respect for Lu Sheng. For the many martial saints of Blue Planet, Lu Sheng had reached a simply unimaginable level, one that even surpassed that of the guide. They remembered how EJI could play with them like an adult with a baby, and yet Lu Sheng had annihilated him and the others with the same ease as crushing a mosquito egg. They understood that, despite also being level 9, in front of Lu Sheng, they couldn't even be considered ants. With eyes shining with joy, Lu Sheng turned around, extended his hand and with a smile mentioned that regarding Iji, perhaps he had gone a little overboard. He acknowledged that his opponent had been too weak and doubted there was anything left of him, then added that he was also aware of the great losses they had suffered during those days. Then, Lu Sheng extended his hand toward the energy crystals and, with a serene look, offered them to take a few tons as compensation, since, after all, they were the supplies of the Star Pirates. Upon hearing this, Jiang Yu's eyes widened in surprise and fear. She couldn't help but sweat and panic at seeing so many energy crystals. She and the others were in shock, but with a smile, Lu Sheng made it clear that it was not necessary for them to give him the crystals he had asked them to collect. Instead, he told them to divide them among themselves to increase their strength because for him what he already possessed was more than enough. With a grateful expression, Jiang Yu bowed before Lu Sheng, greeted him respectfully and mentioned that they could not dare to take so many resources. According to her, this amount was so large that, since the energy crystals were discovered, such an enormous sum had never been seen. With a cheerful smile, Lu Sheng crossed his arms and explained that surpassing a martial saint was simply a matter of perspective. He urged them to take the crystals, telling them they had to think big, because otherwise, they would not be able to live up to the cosmos in the future. Upon hearing the word perspective, Jiang Yu's eyes widened with fear and surprise. She could not believe what Lu Sheng had just said. In outer space, a starship was traveling at the speed of light. Inside was the leader of the Star Pirates, Crimson Eye. He put his hand on his chin and with a curious expression asked her what the result of the scan was. With a serene expression, the woman began to touch her ear and reported that they could confirm that the 3 ships were on that planet. She added that the energy scan showed 24 level 9 energy sources and no level 10 or higher had been detected. With a serious gaze, the leader asked if there was a possibility that they were hiding their energy. With eyes shining with excitement, she revealed that their ship, the Demonic Claw, was a level 11 ship, one of the best in every aspect, and for something to be able to hide from its sensors. In front of them there was a giant screen. They began to observe attentively, and she mentioned that only a level 12 ship could achieve something like this, and it was impossible for such a small and unknown planet to possess such technology. The leader's eyes began to shine with curiosity. It was puzzling to him that the ships were there, but the people had disappeared, without any being detected above level 11. He wondered if it would be possible that they had voluntarily cut off communication with them, and what reason those three would have for abandoning them in such a determined way. He stood up and turned his back on the blue planet. He didn't understand it, but decided it didn't matter. In any case, it was time to recover the ships, since at that distance it was possible to do so. The woman nodded her head and mentioned that the 3 spaceships were being forced to return. At the same time on the blue planet, Lu Sheng and the Saints came out of Frando's spaceship and began talking among themselves. Not long after, the ship activated, and its thruster began to glow. Lu Sheng's attention was fixed on it and his eyes filled with confusion and surprise. The ship began to fly. Using his power, Lu Sheng extended his hand and started to prevent it from flying away. He didn't know what was happening or if there was someone inside the ship. Zhang Yu put her hand over her chest, and with a serious gaze she revealed that there was no one inside the spaceship, and asked if Lu Sheng had forgotten that they couldn't break through the ship's defenses. Lu Sheng closed his eyes and decided to take a look. He activated his perception, and thanks to this, he could see a spaceship flying near the blue planet. He opened his eyes, which began to shine with rage upon realizing that they were controlling the ships remotely. With disdain, he wondered if they really intended to recover something that he already considered his own. Thanks for watching Vivify Recaps. If you enjoyed it, hit like, subscribe, and drop your next recap request in the comments. See you in the next one.